I would like to obviously thank immensely both the Whitechapel and Aware for this invitation. It's absolutely extraordinary to be here today listening to all these, very important people doing extremely important work, and it's incredibly inspiring, and I hope that this panel is just going to continue this, and I know it will, because I've been thrilled just having conversations with the three women we're about to hear, and felt very privileged to know about their activities more. I'm actually based in Paris, and therefore hadn't had the chance to know so much about some of these issues. Well, not some of these issues, they're very much in everything I do, but I hope that what we're going to talk about now is just going to amplify what we've heard up till now, and some of the words we've been hearing, some of the, like whether it's philanthropy and therefore the profile of the entire network, the entire ecosystem of the art world being necessary in this thinking and in this conversation, and enabling these groundbreaking artists, the question of empowerment, of leadership, and standing in solidarity, and the idea of a cause-based institution that could be devoted to thinking about art made by women. And I think that's a very interesting title to today, art by women rather than women artists. It's a very interesting choice. And this question of gender balance and gender parity, and the question of risk-taking, which I know that is going to be incredibly obvious in the presentations we're going to hear now, and advocacy and action, and building bridges between collections and private collections and public institutions and all the other necessary networks we've talked about, the curators, the public programs, and so forth, and how all of that comes together. So I'm supposed to be very brief, and obviously it's a real privilege to be here with this archival exhibition of the Guerrilla Girls that are posing some of these fundamental questions and have been doing so. And I particularly love their use of the word genderosity, for instance. And I think that's, again, something that we're really going to sense in the coming presentations, and the idea that we're all participating in making more visible a certain matrimony. Sorry about this. So first of all, the format will be approximately 10-minute presentations by all three, and then we will talk and open up to questions afterwards. So we're going to, first of all, meet Valeria Napoleone, that some of you may know since she's based here and her collection is here. She's been, I think, and I may be mistaken, but collecting for about 20 years, and has become more and more public, basically. In that time, she's always been a patron for art by women. Really supported Studio Voltaire, for instance, but has recently, I suppose, gone up a notch by working with the Contemporary Art Society, where she's a trustee, and donating one significant work by a living artist to a UK-based museum every year. And that's also in connection with Camden Art Centre that we've been hearing about already. And in tandem with this, an artist commission with the Sculpture Centre in Long Island. And I think one of the images in the PowerPoint presentation will be part of that story, because very significantly, Anthea Hamilton's work was then in the Turner Prize. And she has, her collection has actually gone public in the actual sense of the term, since her collection has been shown in Sheffield last year and is now in Touchstones Rochdale in Greater Manchester in an exhibition called Going Public, the Napoleone Collection, which is, increased visibility and discussion around her collection. What she talks about in the many interviews that one can find on the web, for instance, is her closeness with artists and how these have become friendships and real collaborations that are well beyond just purchasing a work of art. And it's fascinating, I think, to discover how complementary but incredibly different Valeria's collection and Floriane's collections are, and how differently they are presented. It seems, and you may correct me there, but that Valeria chooses to be surrounded by her collection at home, and that Floriane perhaps chooses a different strategy, or by choosing one artwork from her collection that is shown and changed in her home regularly. So that is, for instance, a fascinating point perhaps to hear more about. Lisa Panting, who is the co-director with Malin Stahl of Hollybush Gardens that you probably all visit regularly, has had a experience in the not-for-profit sector earlier, and has, I suppose it's really fascinating how she has developed from that into founding Hollybush Gardens and this activity. And I think it will be fascinating to hear her take on collecting and how she collaborates, or how they collaborate with artists who might not necessarily be the most commercial artists initially. And that is incredibly, so it's her sort of long-term commitment also to working with certain artists is going to be absolutely fascinating, and questioning. I mean, I very much rely on her and all of you to be questioning this idea of the markets, and what are the fundamental questions that should be posed about how collecting art by women can have an impact on the market, whether it's what it means in the auction houses that you were just mentioning, what it means at art fairs, but also way beyond that in the systems that can be created. And finally, Floriane de Saint-Pierre, who is actually the president of Aware Angels, I think, if I'm correct in saying, and who is based in Paris primarily, has been collecting for 5 or 6 years, specifically art by women in any case, and is completely passionate about telling the stories, and how she talks about vitamins and this virus that has suddenly taken over her life since beginning this very specific collection. Discovering some of the artists that it's fascinating to discover how much they are also researchers and practically art historians. I think you'll see the PowerPoint presentations are absolutely fascinating, and talking about, for instance, Mary Casindas, who was the first woman to have a solo show at MoMA, and how that story, for instance, is just one of the very many stories that's absolutely fascinating. I think you also are incredibly involved way beyond your collection with the Centre Pompidou, with the Palais de Tokyo, and also with the ethics and boards, which is way beyond the art world, a really important kind of strategy thinking, analytical watching board, which presumably is incredibly complementary with this, for instance, with this collection building. So perhaps I should mention that I'm not from the commercial scene. I'm an independent curator based in Paris, and I was extremely fortunate to meet Camille Morino a few weeks ago, particularly to discuss this research I'm doing about Joanna Drew, who was an incredibly important figure in the UK from the 50s to 2000, starting off her career at the Arts Council of Great Britain and then becoming Hayward Director, And just to mention this very briefly, because of course all the curators and the administrators and the public programmers and so forth also are so important as part of this story and are just as invisible sometimes. And it's incredibly, anyway, interesting to see the full picture. So first of all, Valeria.